Well, hello and welcome to Volume 4 of Drink the Music. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, last week we talked about Taylor Swift. That was some folk music. That was weaving this tale, this very melancholic tale. And today we're getting into an album that's also weaving a tale. It's a little bit more existential. It's a little bit more crisis management, kind of almost in a way. But we're talking about one of my favorite albums of all time from one of my favorite bands of all time. That is the 2003 album Absolution by Muse.
Yeah. I'm so excited to get your take on all of these things and all of these songs because this is, I think, the third album for Muse. And it
Mm-hmm,
came
mm-hmm.
out in 2003. There's a lot going on in 2003. And it's sad and strangely ironic looking back on this now and thinking that this was a very apocalyptic kind of take on what was happening in the world, and
Yeah.
and if we could only go back and and tell these people that 20 years from now they've not seen anything yet. In 2003 there's so much more to come that
Yeah.
could be considered worse. It's just amazing. But these things did create some of the most amazing kind of like you said, kind of esoteric rock, almost like rock opera without it being operatic. Like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the Muse like stormed in on the scene with this album. I feel like I hadn't heard of them before this came out, when you had Hysteria hit the radio, and the other one that's not called Hysteria, Time Is Running Out.
The other one that's not called Hysteria. That's right. Time is running out. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Muse kind of came onto the scene pretty hot, pretty fast, but not really in a way. And I've got some info here on the background of Muse a little bit, Michaela. So Dominic Howard, who's the drummer for Muse, he met Matthew Bellamy, who is the lead man, the guitarist, the piano player. When Bellamy auditioned to be in Dominic's band, Carnage Mayhem, which is a pretty cool name. Pretty cool name. The band was then renamed to Gothic Plague. Also cool name. They recruited Chris Wolstenholme, who is the bass player for Muse. He was a drummer and said, "Yeah, I can do that." Started taking bass guitar lessons and came on to be the bass player for Muse, which is amazing to me because one of the songs on this album, Hysteria, is like the 11th rated like bass lick of all time, according to like I don't know, like some guitar website thing I was looking on. Like it's incredible that you could just pick that up and learn it when you're in college to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, so he came, joined up the bands, and they renamed again to Rocket Baby Dolls. Not as good of a name. And they went to this battle of the bands, which they won, and decided they should probably start taking their banding a little bit more seriously if they wanted to be a band. So they renamed to Muse and began playing a lot all over England, London, Manchester, all of these clubs. I think it's called like the Cavern or the Cave or something like that, which is in London, and playing there a lot, and kind of kept going back and forth. But they can never really land this record deal in the UK, so they came over to the United States. They played on like the new band stage at the '99 Woodstock, got a record deal, went back to England, got a record deal there, and boom, their career was off. They had their first album, Showbiz, came out in 1999. It was followed by Origin of Symmetry in 2001, but we never heard about that here in the United States because there was a bit of squabble between the two record labels and the band, so that never came out until 2005. So really, when we get Absolution in 2003, at least here in the States, that was only the second glimpse we ever had at Muse, and that was the first time, same as you, Michaela, I'd ever heard them. Time is Running Out came onto the radio, and that kind of set the scene for Muse. It got up the charts a little bit, 107th, I think, on the Billboard top charts, which is good enough basically to kind of plant the seed and says Muse is viable in America. Let's let them go forward, be fruitful, multiply, win a couple of Grammys, which is what they've done. But it all started here, at least in my eyes, with Absolution.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to dive into this because this is not, this is very different. I mean, it's only the third volume that we've done for Drink the Music, but it's a very, very different band, right? Where we are in to some heavy drums. We're into some very beautiful, haunting kind of symphonic falsetto-ness, right? Which is different than Coldplay. But kind of in that higher register. I feel like this whole album was an entertainment experience, right? Where
Mhm.
you could go and do this. Remember, it came out in 2003, so Napster was a thing.
Sure.
Maybe not for very much longer, but people could definitely go and download just a song somewhere off the internet. And so we were just beginning to see whether or not that was going to have an effect on records and albums as a whole. So this album was definitely meant to be listened to like an old-fashioned record, in the sense that it has an intro, it has an interlude. It, to me, definitely has these sweeping kind of build-ups and crescendos, the way that an opera would, even though this, to me, doesn't have the same sort of operaticness as, say, Iron Maiden would have. Like, this is a different
Mhm.
animal altogether, but still incredibly enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into all that, what we like about the album, what we don't like about the album, and go through the tracks here in just a minute. But before we do that, so we're going to have to take a quick break and mix up a cocktail that is worthy of, I don't know, some existential crisis that you're about to have while you're listening to this thing. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink. All right, so Michaela, if we're going to be getting in to Muse's album Absolution, I was looking for some cocktails, and you had a lot of things to go off of. I was thinking about what kind of flavors I would want to have in there, which led me down kind of this rabbit hole of looking at absinthe. I was thinking some absinthe drinks. Really seemed like they were going to fit kind of the tone, the mood, kind of the I don't know, like the artistic like expressions that Muse is playing around with that. And that led me to a couple of cocktail variants, and I actually found one called the Absolution, which is a riff on the last word, which is a very, very classic cocktail. But the Absolution to me seemed like kind of this perfect thing because it's I don't know, it's luscious, it is strong, it is very strong, which is what this album is coming straight out of the gates. But it also has kind of this I'm almost kind of like inner look, right? When you think of absinthe, you think of like poets going to France and drinking
Oh
absinthe,
yeah.
and that's kind of the same vibe I get absolutely actually from the album Absolution. So we're gonna mix one of these up, Michaela. It's real simple because it's even parts, which is a cocktail method that I love myself because it's easy to remember. But I'm gonna put this together. So go ahead and chill down like a martini or a coupe glass. And then you're going to put into your shaker tin 3/4 ounce of Benedictine, 3/4 of an ounce of maraschino liqueur, Luxardo, 3/4 of an ounce of Applejack. If you can't find Applejack, you could use some apple brandy, or you could just use like some rye whiskey, something like that. 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, and then you're going to take that, shake that with some ice, and then strain it into your coupe glass that you've misted a little bit of absinthe over. If you don't have a mister, you can just pour in just like a teaspoon or so, kind of give it a rinse around the glass, pour out any excess, and then pour in your drink. It's going to be ice cold. It's going to be I don't. It's going to be delicious. I don't know, Michaela, but I found this recipe. I wasn't sure what to think about it. Those every time I see Benedictine on a recipe, I'm like, I don't know. Do I like Benedictine? And every time I have it, yes, the answer is yes. Why don't I do more things with this bottle of Benedictine I've had for
That's
years?
right. Yeah. Well, I feel that way with the absinthe as well, because I don't like licorice. Absinthe definitely has this kind of licoricey hue to it. This, and I agree with you. This looked, when you sent me the ingredients list, I was like, this is going to be awful. I don't think I like any of these things. And then I made it and was like, oh my gosh, this is dark. It's very, there's a lot going on in the glass. We definitely, word to the wise, if you don't have a mister and you just pour a little bit of absinthe in there, make sure that you pour out the excess, because that will overpower the
Yeah.
entire
Mhm.
Benedictine, Applejack, Luxardo kind of story you got going. And you don't want that. You really want to be able to taste kind of the deepness of the cherry. That Applejack, the apple brandy is really got adds a nice hint of sweetness to it. And Benedictine, why don't we do more with Benedictine? We
I don't
need
know.
to do another Drink the Music with just Benedictine drinks
Yeah,
next time on the lobby bar. It's just 3 things you can make with Benedictine because it's
that's
so
right.
good.
Yeah, top 10 Benedictine drinks coming your way on a future lobby bar for sure. Yeah, this was really good. The last word is a cocktail that I like a lot. It's same kind of thing. It's rye whiskey and green chartreuse in there, but equal parts. And this was kind of a riff on that. I found it from uh where did I find this from? I found this from Kindred Cocktails, and Yeah, it seemed perfect to me for this album. So I thought let's mix it up and try it out. And try it out, we did. It was delicious. And I think that you're going to love it out there. So make sure you give this one a try. Mix one up, send us pictures, all that good stuff. And it's going to be perfect to pair with this week's album, Absolution. So why don't we do this, Michaela? Let's mix up another one of these cocktails. We'll go grab the record, we'll put it on, and we'll be right back to chat about Muse's 2003 album.
Spoiler warning for Muse's
We're not doing
Absolution
spoiler
album.
warnings. We're not doing spoiler warnings. You can't spoil
Look,
an album. Go listen to.
I
Go
guess you
listen to
can.
Absolution. I guess
Go
you
listen to
could.
Absolution. Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, we should talk about, intro. We should talk about the intro first. That's what we should talk about. It's like 25 seconds long, and it truly
Yep.
sets you up for this album of many songs.
It does, yeah. It's an intro. It's right in the name. Their track number one is this intro. It's kind of this march. You're hearing very much like this goose step kind of thing going in here, and it's kind of setting the tone for this very apocalyptic tale that you're about to get into, and it runs right into track number two, "Apocalypse, Please." And I really like this song. It's got like this tearing piano. It's very like heavy metal piano, very Beethoven esque coming in. This song, in a lot of ways, is almost like the most heavy metal sounding song on the album, which is interesting because there's not really any sort of lead guitar parts to it. It's just the piano and a little bit of bass drum and a little bit of the bass guitar and drums. And yeah, basically the song is saying this is the end of the world. It's setting the apocalyptic tone for the album. And you can kind of look at that, kind of in any way that you want to, right? Is it by war or by the government or by religion or technology? It's really kind of opening that door for how you're looking at the apocalypse, the impending apocalypse here.
Yeah, for sure. I think I actually made some really good notes because I had never heard this album before.
Mm.
And I feel like Apocalypse Please was very much like a slap in the face of like, if we were watching this or we were in like a symphonic experience of watching this on stage where people were playing it, we would want to know we're in the middle of like a war zone. I felt like there was again these layers of drums mixed with kind of these synthesizing pianos or keyboards, and then this beautiful haunting really high registered tenor singer that's got this just, the lyrics are really interesting, but like the way in which he kind of vibrates through the song is really interesting. It's a little scary, going from
Fair, sure.
something that, the intro kind of lets you know something's coming, but man, you are smacked with this. You're just,
Yeah.
and then you're in it for the rest of the album. It's great.
Yeah, the pianos come in, they hit really hard. I almost kind of liken this when I'm listening to it, like I'm picturing like Matt Bellamy sitting at the piano, like in this dark room. And this is kind of almost like this dystopian manifesto that he's weaving and putting down on page here, which I think is pretty interesting. So that's how you get the album started off there with the intro and Apocalypse, Please, which gives way to kind of the big main single. This was the first ever Muse song that I ever heard. Time is Running Out. It was one of the last songs recorded for the album and kind of added to it. And I think that it was kind of the first like crossover hit, right? This was kind of the benchmark that said Muse could be successful here in America, which transformed them from a very big European band, which is pretty good, to being a very big, kind of cross the pond band, which is a real big deal. It's kind of this pseudo like love song about a real unhealthy relationship, which is kind of a arena Matt Bellamy explores a lot, especially he's had a relationship and a child with Kate Hudson, and that's something that gets explored with throughout kind of Muse's albums. And if you're looking at this album as kind of like this like end of days telling, you're looking at this relationship and that's kind of all that you're left with.
Yeah, it's one of those, the intro to this song, the very first like 35 seconds or so really sets you up for this idea that you're going to love this song, but it's going to be painful. And the lyrics where he's talking about, I'm not going to let you kill it, I'm not going to let you smother it. I remember I had never really listened to the lyrics before, other than knowing that he's the chorus, right?
Mhm.
And so I was like, what are they talking about? What is he saying? Is it a person? Is it a baby? Is it and it's kind of like that, where it's this relationship that's like, you're gonna ruin it and we're gonna run out of time and the world is ending, because remember, we just listened to Apocalypse Please. So
Right.
you're like, okay, it's really daunting, and I'm sad in a way that it's the first time that I listened to this album for the sake of the pod, because I think that if people hear it on the radio, they get a much different view of what this is than if you hear it in context with the album itself.
Mhm.
Because at the beginning, you think that it's like this really hot, like, song that people would use in like commercials, or people could use to show somebody cool walking down the street. Like, that's what you think of, but it's
Mhm.
really something altogether very different, darker, much more emotionally driven, very sad, very poetically dark.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And it has kind of that same kind of thing that a lot of really good hit singles have, is that it sounds good on the radio, right? It has kind of like this hooks to it, but when you listen to it in the context of the album, it plays completely differently, and that is exactly what that song does here. Time is running out, which leads into a song number 4, "Sing It for Absolution." So this one has a lot more of that falsetto kind of vocal range that Matt Bellamy uses, and it goes up. It kind of gets into like this etherealness of it. It's kind of like a breakup song almost in a way, but like the cause of that breakup is really vague here in Absolution. Is it death? Is it like religious ascension? Is it a failed enlightenment kind of thing? It's a lot of piano, very light coming in, and then it goes into this just obnoxiously like crazy guitar outro kind of solo sort of thing. And like I like some of the lyrics here and this, like I said, it's kind of like this breakup song, are just absolutely searing, right? Our wrongs remain unrectified and our souls won't be exhumed. That's about as angsty as you can get, putting pen to paper right there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the right word is emo for this, but I definitely feel like I wanted to wear black lipstick and dye everything I owned black at the end of this, because even at the beginning, the lyrics are, "Your lips are turning blue, a kiss that can't renew. I only dream of you, my beautiful." This very much made me think of like Edgar Allan Poe, Annabelle
Mm.
Lee, like someone has died. I mean, and there's no getting it back. I'll be singing and falling from your grace. I mean, though it's so dark, and I really love, this is the first kind of slower song on the album, and so it was nice to see them give us a break a little bit on some of the really harsh drums and guitar, although the melody of the kind of tenor register is super haunting. I think this one stayed with me for a lot longer than I thought it was going to after listening to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So that is track number 4, "Sing for Absolution," which goes into track number 5, "Stockholm Syndrome," which takes its name from kind of that syndrome that they studied and took from those bank robbers that basically got the captives to basically fall in love with them, right? Is kind of what that is, and that's kind of what the song is about. It's a very very driving kind of rock song, which gives way. A lot of this album kind of goes from like these very like, I don't know, piano melodies to just like these searing guitar pieces kind of back and forth. That one is happening right here for sure. And I think that this one speaks a little bit more to like losing yourself or losing your love to whatever you think Absolution is about, right? Whatever you think this album is about, I think that this song is kind of like this is you losing your loved one, your love, your romantic love, your family, whatever the case is, losing it to that, right? So losing it to religion or to politics or to wars or whatever the case is, whatever you think about it. Stockholm Syndrome comes in really nicely and kind of slots that story in to remind you that the song could be about you.
Yeah. I really loved the lyrics. All my life I've been on my own. I used the light to guide me home, but now together we're alone and there's no place I'd ever want to go. Baby, look what you've done. I mean, it's like when a relationship ends and you're with a person still, you're more alone than you've ever felt, than you'd ever maybe felt when you were alone in the first place. And yet, because of the maybe toxic unhealthiness of it, you're like, I still don't want to be anywhere else but in this place that's totally unhealthy and I'm miserable. It's it's the lyrics here really got me. And one of the things that I loved about this song was the layering of the heavy drums. The drums really drove a lot of the song for me, but then these really beautiful lighter like licks from the guitar, and then of course, you know, the singing and the vocals. This really tied together like a rope of three prongs for me, or three threads that kind of brought things together in a way that other songs on this album didn't. And I thought that that was a really interesting take, for anybody that's never that is not normally a Muse fan. I think this is a really amazing song to be like, hey, if you don't know Muse, this tells you a lot of what you need to know about what they're about musically.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is Stockholm Syndrome, which gives us way into kind of this little three-track kind of thing going on here. And it starts with number 6, Falling Away With You, which is this, you know, kind of just like plucked out guitar piece. It's really slow. It's really, really quiet, and it's really, really angsty, for sure. It's talking about kind of the memories and pains associated with losing love. I really like kind of through these choruses here. It's like, I feel my world and I feel my life, I feel my soul falling away with you, which is about as angsty again as it can get. This is very angst driven album, for sure. And that's what this one is. It's almost like mournful sounding, like you don't know what happened, but you know, it's very like regretful and mournful sounding, but it's very slow, it's very melodic, it's very pretty, it's a very pretty song. It's going to give way to just kind of this like typhoon of noise that's about to come.
Yeah, yeah, and it does come with Hysteria and Interlude. Those are much different, right? We have this, again, it's a roller coaster, right? You're smacked at the very beginning with this idea that you're in this apocalyptic wasteland. Then you have these really sad love songs that are focused on like the death of a relationship and how that can liken to an actual death, or feeling like you're trapped, but you don't want to be anywhere else. Falling Away With You is like the end of that for me, where you're now scraping at the bottom of the barrel of your own emotions, and you so filled with missing and longing, and you feel your soul is literally crumbling. It's yeah, it's really, man, it's hard to really describe. Like, I feel like, and you said it earlier when we were talking about this album, that it's something that you would liken to a like a poet's den in Paris doing, you know, drinking absinthe, right? This very much was like, if I was, this is kind of, to me, the darkest part of the album before it kind of goes through and finds the anger again. It's very hopeless. And you're, you know, thinking about being in a room with people listening to this, where you're all just completely kind of, there is no more hope. There's nothing left to give. There's nothing. You're just at the end of your rope, kind of.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of look at that song almost as like this like piece of music of like a wake, where you're looking at your love that's just died, and it transitions very seamlessly and beautifully into the interlude here, track number 7, which is basically a carbon copy of Adagio for Strings by Samuel Barber, the American composer. Listen to that. It's gorgeous. It's the same kind of chord progression here, except obviously here with Muse, they're doing it on this very fuzzed out guitar, which sounds incredible. I really love the interlude here, and how it plays into the song. And then, of course, it drops out perfectly blended into track number 8, which is Hysteria. It's got this opening bass line that is just absolutely insane. Matt Bellamy comes in and plays guitar. This is probably the most kind of like guitar show-offy part of the album. Same for the bass line, really. And, you know, both of these gentlemen, Matt and Chris, are very accomplished at their instruments. But this album to me really kind of strips it back, and we're getting more piano, a little bit more melodic kind of things. And I really like this song. I mean, obviously it's one of the hit singles from the album, so it plays very well. But I like this song because it's almost like this like unaccepting, like insatiable, like bit of rage that falling away from you like caused basically, right? It's like you leave the love, and then you go here and you just go on a bender, and that's what Hysteria sounds like to me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Because now I'm so brokenhearted, I can't lament that anymore. And now I'm just going to turn that into something that is going to drive me forward, and nothing like good old fashioned rage for that.
Nothing like good old fashioned rage. That's right. Give me your heart and your soul, and give me an album break, Michaela, because we are halfway through the album now. It is time to flip over that vinyl. If that's how you're going to be listening to it, that's how we're listening to it here at Drink the Music. We're going to mix up another one of our Absolution cocktails and get into this a little bit. So, Michaela, kind of at the top, you asked me when did I hear Muse the first time, and I would like to tell you now. It is Time is Running Out. That is the first Muse song that I ever heard. I heard it on the radio. I was in college in the year 2003, so you can go ahead and do whatever mathematics you would like there. But this came on a radio station. It's called 89X. It was out of Windsor, Ontario, which was neat because I got a lot of Canadian music. I got a lot of UK music there coming out of Canada. Now 89X has turned into a country music station, which I've found out today in researching for this, which makes me sad. It makes me really sad because I learned a lot about music listening to that radio station, and I learned about Muse listening to that radio station. It was the first time that I'd ever heard them. Right? No, I never heard of Showbiz. I still never heard of Showbiz for like 10 years after I first listened to this album. So, what about you, Michaela? I'm assuming you were kind of the same way, right? I don't want to pretend that our time is running out or Hysteria were like these like massive like chart topping hits, because they weren't, but they were good enough that I think most people our age probably knew of these songs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at that point, I was also in college, and there was, college radio, even in College Station, Texas, which was about the size of a footprint um, on the map, even then. And I do remember hearing it, and hearing Time is Running Out and thinking, this is really good. I hope at the time I was like, man, I hope that they don't get pigeonholed because of their sound, because it was so unique at the time. I mean, this was, they get compared a lot on Reddit to like the Killers. They get compared a lot to some other bands that, in all honesty, they sound nothing like, but they have this really signature sound, kind of like Radiohead has a signature sound, right? Like you're listening to Muse, and you will know if someone's trying to pass that off as something else, right? Like they have this incredibly unique sound, and I really liked that. I'm glad that when you look at the album, it showcases more than the sounds that the two singles had, because I think that would get old. But I think that the forthcoming albums after this too really showed their depth. And so I don't know. I really, I remember that time. It was in the fall, and I remember it was cold out, and I remember that this seemed like a perfect, like spooky, especially when it's got that da 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 da, like kind of melodic. I'm butchering it, but hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Where it was very almost like the like some of the musical scores that we've talked about in the past, right? Like the very just eerie, creepy, angsty stuff that when you're young and everything is huge and every relationship you have is like so important to you. And if you remember in the early 2000s, I mean, we were going to war. We had just been attacked as a country. So we were kind of in this, is the world ending? Is this the world ending? And this really captures that moment in time. That whole album does that.
Yeah, that's a theme that Muse explores a lot, really, through kind of all of their albums. But this is almost the most cohesive of that telling, I think, between any of the albums. And I like it really from that standpoint point there. But yeah, same as you, kind of heard those first couple of singles, really liked it, got the album, really loved the album, and kind of fell in love with Muse in that way. But as we mentioned, Muse wasn't really that big of a deal here in the United States. So one of the things that I always wanted to do was I always wanted to go see Muse in concerts. They weren't doing a lot of touring here. They ended up eventually doing like this opening gig for U2, which is a pretty good gig if you're doing rock and roll music there in 2008. And then they finally came and did their first like big, huge, like blown out stadium tour in the United States in 2009. So I was always looking at them. I'm like, man, Muse has won like 100 awards for being like the best live act in Europe and the UK and Germany, all of these awards they've been winning. I'm very excited to see them. And then I was actually moving to Europe myself. And on that same year, the same year I moved to Europe, they came and did their first American tour, and they played about 2 hours from here on my birthday. That was a slap in the face, Muse. You're lucky that I stuck with you after I was
no.
I was slighted. So I have been able to see them. I'll talk about that here in a second. But I think you've seen Muse as well, Michaela.
Actually, yeah. So my husband and I got an opportunity with some friends. It was a kind of a drunken late night purchase. I'm not going to lie. We were like, hey, they're coming. Is it going to be good? I don't know. And it's to this day, it's one of my husband's favorite like live shows he's ever been to. And he's a Pearl Jam fan. He's like a fanatic. So everything is, always kind of compared to that and found wanting. So take that with a grain of salt. But seriously, one of the most amazing experiences because they know how to put on a show, and it is a sight to see. If you are a Muse fan at all, even if you're kind of like me, kind of their like a frosting fan is what I would like to say that I was, because I didn't heavy listen to any of their albums. I would know them if I heard them, but that was it. I still thought that it was a really amazing show.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very amazing show. And I've had the chance now to see them 3 times. I saw them way back in 2013 in Columbus, Ohio, and actually just this year again in Columbus, Ohio. So like it was almost 10 years to the day that I saw them there. And I saw them here in Charlotte when they were in town in 2017. And Muse concert will blow you away. It's not like over the top, right? It's not like Kiss, but it is very I don't know. I wouldn't even call it like theatrical, but just like the stagemanship of these 3 gentlemen and what they pull off and do is really, really spectacular. And then the way they perform live is also incredible. So very good, very well warranted. If you ever have the chance to get out and see Muse live, highly recommend doing that.
Agreed.
All right. Well, that's going to take care of our album break. Let's grab our cocktail and get back into it then. Michaela, we are on to side B, and the first track of side B is track number 9, Blackout. Blackout, to me, it's very much, I don't know, it works on a lot of levels. This one hits me real hard listening to it right now. Is like, kind of this midlife crisis piece. But I think that you could look at it either on like just like your journey like into adulthood, right? Like you're getting out of like the house for the first time, or like on your deathbed, and it's talking about stuff like this love's too good to last, this life's too good to last, or this could be the last. It's very existential and thinking about kind of your place within all of this in the world, which is obviously a theme for the album, but it gets you right back on track, right? We just went from Hysteria, which is this big, bombastic single of Fury, and it gets you into Blackout, which is more like, no, come back down to earth here. Don't look at the album cover with those people flying away. Come back down here. We're still talking about how you don't understand your place in all this. There's a lot of heavy reverb and kind of this guitar solo bit in the middle. The guitar is really beautiful. It almost sounds like a violin more than it does guitar, which is really pretty. But Blackout gets us kicked back off. Yeah,
it sure does. I mean, I feel like it's interesting that you said that this kind of like a midlife crisis, because I feel like the kind of reality hit, it's almost also, I don't think it's meant to be hopeful, but I think that in spite of it, I was hopeful listening to it, because it's like, this is just a phase. And if this is just a phase, if the good part's just a phase, then the bad part might only be a phase. When it's like, I'm too old to dream, it's like, are we though? Because there's there's an ability, especially during that solo, kind of in the middle of the song. That's kind of where my mind went, where if it's like, don't grow up too fast, enjoy every moment, because this moment's going to change and this moment's going to end. And then there'll be another moment. So it's kind of the good and the bad, right? It's highly angsty, but that's kind of how I took it. And maybe it's because if you're going over to a whole new, you've turned over and now you're on the B side of the album. Maybe you're too hopeful and it needs to beat you back down. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is track number 9, Blackout, which goes into my favorite song on the album, Michaela. Number 10, Butterflies and Hurricanes. You could definitely look at the song and think that it's kind of like some like protest of like war song, right? Your number has been called, fights and battles have begun, revenge will surely come. But I think you could also just kind of look at it and could be kind of seen as like compliance basically to any kind of system, which is, you know, the theme of this album really is how you fit into like these systems that we're forced into, you know, being this cog of the wheel kind of thing. There's like this little like synth staccato bit, which gives way to this just like massively crazy piano like concerto just in the middle of it. I like to think of it, you know, the song is called Butterflies and Hurricanes, like it's almost like this like very raucous bit, and then it goes into like the eye of the hurricane where you're just getting this like beautiful whimsical piano concerto, and then it just like hits that wall and just goes back, like, you know, cranks it to 11 to go kind of through the rest of this. But yeah, my favorite song on the album, and an album that I like a lot of the songs on, to be honest, but this is my favorite.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one too. I think the end, right before the end, the way the music kind of gets lighter, it's almost like a coming home, like kind of a Valhalla effect, I feel like, that it did, because you're right. I mean, it's when I thought of the idea of butterflies and hurricanes, the first thing I thought of was the small moves that butterflies make, and the idea of the butterfly effect, right? That you could get a hurricane instead of snow, you know, or something like that. And so how you know, if you're going to change the world, use this chance to be heard. Even if it's something small, it can have a really big effect. I don't know. I thought that there was something to it with that as well. And don't, you know, your last chance is here. So, you know, take it for all it's worth, which I thought was a really interesting kind of juxtaposition from the last song, right? Which is basically, you know, Blackout is like, all right, come back down to earth. Nothing's going to happen. It was very like back and forth to me, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I like how at the tail end of the last kind of chorus section, it's the same exact chorus, but the way it's delivered, it almost like flips it on its head to being like you're a piece of this machine, to now you have ownership over what you're
That's
doing,
right?
right? You've got to be your best, you've got to change the world and use this chance to be heard. So it's almost like hopeful, right? Like seize the day, almost here in this last, as opposed to being, you know, piece of this machine. So track 10, we get into track 11 here, The Small Print. I think there's probably a couple interpretations of this song. You could look at it through like a lens of like addiction or stardom. I always kind of looked at it, and this is at like the very like dawn of all of this stuff. I think MySpace launched in the same time, but I always looked at this song as like the price you pay to live kind of in this digital future. There's a line here, and it's like, you know, I'll sell your memories for 15 pounds per year, but just the good days, right? So it's almost like whenever I think of the song, I think about like posting on Instagram and posting on Facebook and things, and you're only showing the best side of yourself, and you're basically selling this version of yourself. And I've always kind of been creeped out by it, but I've always really liked it. Especially, like I said, this came out in 2003, which I think was like the same year that that MySpace launched, and you know, Facebook wasn't even for a couple of years. But that's what I always kind of associate it with. It's a tale of like this Faustian bargain, and that's kind of what the working title was for this, was very much looking at Goethe's poem Faust and things like this, of, you know, basically selling your soul to the devil, making some deal there, and that's what this one is about. But yeah, I always looked at it as like this digital future piece, and I don't know if that's what it was intended to be, or if it was prophetic in that way. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you probably have something, are pulling a good thread there. One of the things that I really liked, if I can say musically, is at the very beginning, there's like this huge assaultive drum piece, right? Where your ears are just kind of taking a battering, and it's right off the bat, it's right in your face. And then the guitar, kind of the whammy, I don't know, I don't know if I'm using the right words, but like right before the second verse, it was super weird and I really liked it. And I don't really know how to say it other than that, but I thought that was so super cool. And I found this was the point at which, when I watched or listened to this album for the very first time, that I really got into Muse as a band. Because this is not something I'm used to listening to a ton of. And so this was, to me, this was when my brain and my body and my ears kind of was like, I get it. I'm into it. I like it. Like I can stay along for the ride. And it was really amazing because I was able to listen to it many times after that, and really enjoy the songs in a different way. But I do think that if you've never listened to this album, it's probably about this time. If you're still not a Muse fan after this, you're probably just not going to be a Muse fan, because it clicked for me during this song for sure.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. So that was track 11. And then we get into track number 12, Endlessly, which is kind of like this synthesizer with some drums and bass. It has kind of this like pop ballad feel to it. If you are a fan of Muse's discography, the Small Print, track 11, it kind of sounds to me like a song that would have been on Origins of Symmetry, the album before this. Endlessly sounds more like a song that would have come off of their following album, Black Holes and Revelations, to me. But I don't know. This song it's really good. It's a little bit more melodic, and it's talking about, I don't know. It's like an unrequited love. It reminds me a lot of kind of the songs on Coldplay's Viva La Vida that we listened to, of having this love that maybe you never really had the boldness or the confidence to go and say that I love you. This one to me has kind of that same sort of feeling, in terms of like the theme of this song. It's saying that I'll love you endlessly, I'll give you everything, but I won't give you up. I won't let you down, I won't leave you falling. Yeah, it's very much just like this adoration piece on kind of these strange, much darker kind of love tones through the album.
Yeah, this one was much less kind of victim-ish, I felt, where they themselves were the victim rather than victimizing or being in a toxic relationship where they both had done damage to each other. I found it ironic that so in the last song, I had just kind of opened up my whole, I don't know, my soul, my musical soul, to be like, all right, I'm in it. I get it. I think I can get into this. I think I actually might be like a real Muse fan. And then this song completely changed everything, because it sounds like nothing else on this album. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I definitely think that this would have been my favorite if I hadn't really dived in to each song a little bit more over time. Like if I had just listened to this once, I would have said, oh, this is my favorite song, probably because it's the softest. It's a slow song. It's still got that beautiful melody of the registry of the vocals. But it's a lot less angry. It's got a lot less of the things that makes Muse. So I was glad to see that this is, they had this sound previously, and it's just a piece of the growth that you see as a band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So that is track 12, Endlessly. And we get to track number 13, Thoughts of a Dying Atheist, which is kind of a strange song, because this one is almost the most like upbeat and positive sounding musically of the album, but obviously it's tackling pretty tough stuff here, and obviously Absolution, I've said it like 1,000 times now, it's an album that's dealing with kind of ideology, be that religious or be that political or kind of whatever, and the title of this song is very pointed, obviously, right? Thoughts of a Dying Atheist. But I don't think like the song kind of addresses that, but I don't think that specifically is what the song is about. I think it's more about just having your ideologies tested in some way. No matter what you believe in, you're going to get to a point at some point or another where you have to really like commit, right? Like you're like pot committed to seeing that thing through, right? No matter what you believe in, at some point that's going to get put to the test. And I think that's what this song really is about. And I think that it's an interesting way to kind of propose that hypothesis in the album. An album that's about your ideologies, your beliefs, those structures, to then looking at it and be like, okay, this is what you've believed in. Now what?
Right. Yeah, I always found it really interesting growing up, where if the idea of this song I absolutely love, because we like to think, well, society at large is like, well, atheists don't believe in anything, so they have it easy because they can sin all they want or do bad things or whatever, and they don't have a moral compass somehow. But when you get to the idea of death, right, and it's like, well, if they're wrong, and there is a God out there that's like going to put them in hell, that's not cool. And when death is staring you in the face, are you going to then say, well, I'm going to reach out to something and hold on to the hope that there is something, or am I going to really stick to my guns and be like, this is the end and it's okay and it happens to everybody and I'm not going to be afraid? And I love this song, and to me this was an answer to the Time Is Running Out song, because when it has the same fervency for me, where in Time Is Running Out, it's like, I'm not going to let you ruin this love or this relationship or whatever it is that I'm trying to protect. And yet the clock is ticking, and here is like, the clock has ticked, like the moment has arrived, and what is it do you do with that? Are you, how afraid are you going to be faced with your convictions and the things that you believe or don't believe, right at the end? And I really thought that was just super interesting, and it makes sense that it's at the end of the album, because it's like the end all song, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of end of the album, that is where we are at, track 14, kind of asterisk, Ruled by Secrecy. So this is the end of the album if you would have listened to it in 2003, unless you got the album in Japan, or you've gotten it digitally since. So we're going to get into that next track here in a second. But Ruled by Secrecy, it's very much this very soft piano piece. Matt Bellamy is singing this very high falsetto, and then it gives way into like this little piano kind of solo almost in this minor key, which is very like downtrodden and very remorseful sounding. The song, to me, it has like a ton of like unsolved mystery vibes to it in the way that it's coming across, and it has a very like uneasy feeling to me here. And I think that it's a perfect kind of end piece to the album, notwithstanding this bonus track we're going to talk about, because the song kind of presents itself as just this mystery, which is really kind of the theme of the whole album. You look at like the cover artwork, and you're seeing on the vinyl, it's like a little girl, or there's a gentleman standing there, and you're seeing these figures kind of coming in, like the shadows of these figures, and you don't know if just looking at the album cover, if those people are ascending to heaven, if they're descending from a spaceship, or if they're descending from wherever. It's very open to interpretation, and that's kind of what Ruled by Secrecy is, right? It's very much just like laying it out, right? This album was very open to interpretation, and this is kind of the final chapter, just reminding you that there's no real answers to be found in these 14 tracks, only the way that you're thinking about this album.
Yeah, very deeply, like deep-seated thought around this. I mean, I think this is the perfect time to finish up your maybe second or third of the Absolution cocktails that you've made, because at the end of the day, it didn't take itself so seriously at the end. I did write, where's Robert Stack when you need him, in my notes, because I definitely got this kind of vibe to it. I don't know. I like this one. I don't know if I can add anything more than what you just said.
Yeah. So there you go. That is Ruled by Secrecy. That's where the album ends. And in my opinion, that is where the album ends. There is a bonus track. It's called Fury. Like I said, if you got this album in Japan, or if you've gotten it digitally since, there's this track called Fury. I had never heard the song until earlier this year. So fun fact, whenever we're going to a concert, my wife will make a playlist of basically just all the songs from the bands that we're about to go see. So we had a bunch of Muse on this playlist that we've been listening to because I saw them earlier this year, and I heard the song. I'm like, what the heck song is that? I'm pretty well versed in my Muse. If you saw my host of all the Muse albums. I know my songs, but I never heard this. I'm like, what is this? So I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it's this weird like bonus thing that never happened. So in my eyes, it never happened. But the song is pretty good. Apparently, Matt Bellamy really liked the song, but they like vetoed him on putting it on in the first place. So there you go. It's kind of like this blend, like this heavy metal slash pop ballad song, which is really kind of strange, kind of
That's
strange.
exactly
Um,
how I would describe it. Heavy
and
metal and heavy
yeah,
pop.
heavy metal, heavy pop. I don't know. It's like K-pop, K metal. Is it K metal? Is that a thing? I don't
K
know.
metal.
I don't know.
Let's
But
do
that's
it.
that's what Fury is. It's a pretty good tune. Like I said, I don't subscribe to it on my 14 track perfection of Absolution, but it's a good one. It's worth a listen. Give it a listen.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I saw that it was a bonus track, and I knew you would know the backstory behind it. I don't know. I don't think it ends the album as well as uh, if it wasn't there. I kind of like that it's an extra track because if you like Muse, you're going to like it, and that's great. But I think that the album definitely should have ended with Rules by Secrecy because I think that that really puts a nice bookend to the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. So that is the 2003 album Absolution by Muse. So Michaela, you'd said that you knew kind of the radio hits. And there's been a few kind of off and on over the I don't know, they've been Muse has been a band for a long time. I think like their first concert like as Muse was like in 1994 or something like that, which is just crazy. Like it's like 30 years almost at this point, which is pretty cool. So you knew kind of the hits. You made a drunken purchase to go see them in concert. But have you ever done any like digging into Muse or any of their other albums spoke to you more than this, or was it just always like this band? You're like, oh, okay, that's that big British band that comes around every once in a while, or
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I started when we talked about this podcast, right? And we were saying we were going to do this album. I started to really dig in, and I'm really enjoying the way that I'm starting to absorb music. And so now I've gone in and listened to all of the stuff because you can get this digitally, and I wouldn't be able to do this if I wasn't able to do it digitally. But I was able to start listening to it from Muse from the very beginning and go through all of the albums that came out in chronological order. And that's been really interesting because as everybody knows, right, everybody changes. This band has, like you said, they're 30 years old. So they're kind of vibe and sound experience has definitely lengthened and deepened over time. And that's been really cool to see. I mean, I'm really lucky because there's a lot of Muse uh, fans that probably are a lot more into Muse than I was. And I kind of saw them on a fluke. And I didn't have enough appreciation for them at the time, I don't think. But I'm looking forward to them ever having going out on tour again because I will not waste it. I will not waste it. Yeah, so I definitely think that I could say that I'm a proper Muse fan now.
no?
And I think
Excellent.
for any folks who maybe aren't, this is definitely a really good primer album to listen to and give it a listen. And again, I really recommend absorbing it from beginning to end because I think that you'll lose something if you just listen to the hits or you just listen to them out of context.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of Muse ground to explore, and maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that over on our Patreon sometime. Maybe do another couple of albums. I've actually got some quick tips. Quick hits. We're gonna throw out over to our Patreon here real quick. But that is Absolution from Muse. One of my favorite albums from, or no, it's definitely my favorite album from one of my absolutely favorite bands. It's an album that I've loved for 20 years now. And certainly there are a lot of other really good Muse albums out there. So let us know what Muse album is your favorite, if you've ever seen them live, what you think about them, what you think about this album, and let us know if you make an Absolution cocktail because we want to see pictures of it, feedback, all that stuff. You can do that on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram and X and Threads at Drink the Movies. It's facebook.com/Drink the Movies. You go to our website, which is www.drinkthemovies.com. You can see pictures of our cocktail, recipes, episode recaps, all that fun stuff. Get linked up to our Patreon, which is where we have bonus stuff. It's a great way to support the podcast. So make sure you're going to check all that stuff out. And then we're going to have a new album coming again next week. So that vote will be up on Patreon for our patrons to vote. And then we'll mix up a cocktail and talk about it next week. So go there, check that out, and make sure you get subscribed. Michaela, where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported. Anything, if you're listening to us right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button. Go ahead and press it. We would love it if you did, because we've got all the Drink the Music goodness to show you. We do 2 drops a week. It's a lot of fun. We are so excited. We're like in the top 100 of podcasts talking about music and all things entertainment.
True.
Did you know that, Brian? Yeah,
I did only because you sent it to me. So that's pretty awesome. We'll love to see all that stuff. And yeah, it's been just on a side personal notes, I guess, from the podcast. It's been very scary transitioning from movies to music. We've been having fun to it, but it is still scary, right? When you have to abandon what you're doing for the sake of getting people fair and righteous treatment at work and fair compensation and all that stuff. And we're happy to do it, but it was scary. So we've been loving the feedback we've been getting. It's opened up a lot of fun dialogue for us with our fans and people out there on social medias and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep it coming, because we couldn't do what we do without you all to talk to us about all things cocktails, all things music, all things entertainment. We really are grateful for the community that you all have helped to build.
Absolutely. So again, that is Absolution by Muse. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be back to talk about another album next time on
Drink the music.